Who's up there behind the desk? Oh, that's Clint up there tonight. Clint, are we ready? Are we live? All right, I'll give you a minute. Do you remember to turn on the camera? Imagine that. Technology and wanting to be a problem. She was jealous of me going to Hershey, so she had to try to get close. Oh, I was afraid I was going to turn into one just in 2.5 days, man. One thing about it, I hadn't been up there in a long time. I was able to get sweet tea, but it wasn't as good as down here, though. Oh, you got video now, right? Yep, I've got it too. It's kind of weird when you're doing Bible study and you're looking at yourself doing Bible study. That's that dude's an ugly dude right there, man. Whew, that's an ugly boy. Anyway, let's open up with a word of prayer and then we'll jump in. Father, tonight we thank you so much for another Wednesday night on planet Earth. We thank you for this chance to live in this beautiful town, and Lord, and help us, God, to be the good news to our community tonight and to be good news to our community throughout the week and even our country and world. God, as we know the days are getting shorter and the time of your returning is getting nearer and nearer. And so, God, we give you all the honor and the glory for the great things you're doing in our midst and in our presence. We ask it in your name. Amen. So what I want to do kind of tonight is we want to kick off from I'm all tongue-tied. I just spent the last 30 minutes doing our podcast next door with Charles. Acts chapter 1 and verse 28 is sort of our launching pad for today. Talks about ministry, and it talks about our call to do missions. We know that the Great Commission says that as you go and do missions, make disciples of others. But Acts 1:8 is one of the things where Jesus and the Holy Spirit tells us, look, you've got to go and do ministry in your area and around the country was what it would have been, and then all across the world. And so we are called to be involved in all of that. To that end, last week, I got to take a trip with our association, the Flint River Baptist Association. We have nearly 50 churches in our association. And I want you to kind of keep that number 50 in your head a little bit. In our general area, we have 50 churches. We have churches in our association, which is what the Southern Baptist Convention does, is divided into state conventions. Your state conventions are then divided into associations, and it's generally based in an area. So we have some in Spalding, we have some in Lamar, Pike, we have some in Fayette County. So we have some churches in our association all around, altogether about 50 churches. Now, I moved here from Greenville, Georgia, which is part of the Western Baptist Association. They have almost 60 churches in their association. And so between these two churches, or between these two associations, we have over 100 churches that do ministry in that area. And so one of the things that our association has been asked by the Pennsylvania Baptist Network, which is the same as the Pennsylvania Baptist Convention, it's all the same deal. They have asked the state of Georgia and more specifically, our association, to come in and partner with them and the people of Pennsylvania, South Jersey. So it's not all of Pennsylvania, but it's part of Pennsylvania around Harrisburg and the South Jersey area. That's a small little area that they are asking us to work in and to work with, to see if there's any way we can partner with them, to see if there's any way we can help out with some different missions endeavors. For instance, I believe Zebulon last year was involved in backpacks for Harrisburg. And so you sent backpacks and did a backpack ministry for Harrisburg. And that's probably some of the areas where some of that got started. And so I was asked, along with a couple of other pastors from our association, some lay leaders, to fly to Pennsylvania, which, by the way, I'm 46 years old. And I will admit this, that was my first time ever on an airplane, all right? It's easy to say this now, I know, right? But I don't think I was ever scared to be on an airplane. I just never had a reason to be on an airplane before. Did some mission trips in Minnesota, South Dakota, North Dakota, back in high school, but we just got on a bus and rode forever. And so I look back to my high school days and being on a bus for 26 hours, and to think that I hopped on an airplane and I went across the country in an hour and 25 minutes, I'm thinking never again is this big boy getting on a bus and riding that long ever again. In fact, I mean, we are so spoiled, I know, but I get on the plane, I'm like, I'm going to watch a movie on the way home. The movie was an hour and 58 minutes long, and I thought, I can't even watch this movie. I'm not even going to be on the plane long enough. And so just to say all that, that was, in a way, I want to tell you this. I say all that to tell you this. I challenge you from the pulpit to grow out, to go out, and I challenge you to understand that there is a gift zone that you have, but God challenges us to get us out of our comfort zone. And I want you to know that God is challenging me to do that as well. And in this way, he is doing that. Like, I know, and I've known for a long, long time, as my mother could probably speak to this, that God had called me into ministry. And I enjoy preaching. I love it. And I don't even mind being, I hate to meet up with people in the hospitals, but I don't mind any of that. That missions, though, has been that thing that is not the easiest thing for me to be involved in because, number one, I'm a homebody big time. Number two, I've never flown anywhere. And so, and in a lot of ways, it's getting so far out of something that you've ever done before in your life sometimes that it takes, a little bit of push, takes a little bit of encouragement. But it was like Frank came and asked me, and I thought, okay, what are some reasons why I could tell him no? And it was like the Lord just said, that's not a good reason, dude. And then I said, well, God, I've never been on an airplane before. Well, that's the first time for everything, idiot. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. I don't like being away from home. It's 2 nights. You can do that. And so I'm one of these guys, I don't know if there's any other men in the house that is like this. I enjoy doing stuff when I get there. I'm not a fan of leaving the house and traveling to the getting there part. Once I'm there, I'm happy. But getting me out of the house and getting me in the car and doing other stuff, that's a hard thing to make happen for me. So suffice it to say that side of things is the side of things that I've done the least of. In the last 15 years, we've done, the church that I was involved in, we've done a lot of missions to New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Houma, Louisiana, those areas, where we rode a long way and we did a particular thing. And my job in all of that was always, here's the vision, here's what we're going to do. My job is figure out all the details. Figure out everything that you got to do to make it happen. And so that is something that I was like really comfortable with, is how are we going to make it work and how are we going to do it? And then all of a sudden I'm on a plane for the first time in a city I've never been to, and I got to listen to a bunch of people talk. Because that is not a thing that I do well. My mother will tell you, sometimes you cannot shut me up, but a lot of the times I am a very quiet person. And she knows this. There's sometimes you just can't get me to talk. And so you asked me to go on a mission trip and not go and do, not go and fix, but go and listen. And I'm like, this is not for me. I am not what you would classify as a dreamer. Now, I have a vision for a lot of things, but I'm not one of these guys that sits around and goes, well, how do we fix the debt problem? How do we, and we dream all these things, and we try to dream these massive dreams, and then never do anything. Like if you tell me, here's my problem, my brain is going straight to, how do I fix the problem? And how do I fix it like right now, right in that spot? Not how do I fix the whole deal, but let's do this. And so a lot of people dream and dream and dream, and they never do. And so here I am, I found myself in a mission trip where I got to have a whirlwind time. We met with 10 different church planners or ministry leaders from various areas of Harrisburg, Gettysburg, part of the South Jersey area, inner city Harrisburg, Carlisle, Pennsylvania, up towards Amish country, the whole 9 yards. And all we did was go back to back to back and ask them, look, what are the things that are struggles for you? And what are some ways we can help? Because I believe the gospel is, we know, the good news of Jesus Christ. And so what I think God has called me and everybody else that are gospel-believing people is how are we then going to be good news for somebody else? So these ministry leaders were asked to come and tell us about their ministry, and my goal was, how can I be good news for them in that situation, knowing that I can't fix anything today. Only a few of them was I actually able to go and see their ministry and to go and participate in their ministry. And so my job then is to take a look and go, here are some needs, and we can really rationally, logistically help meet some of these needs. Because one of the last things that we want to do is just throw money at a situation. The government does that real well. They take all of our money and they throw it at a need over here. They don't really have a real plan to accomplish it. They just hope the money will fix it. What I believe about missions is, yes, there's money involved in missions, but there's more investment, there's more capital involved in the manpower of missions and helping a church and giving them a boost. And so let me just kind of share with you then a couple of reasons why this area is so important for us to be able to work with. For instance, I told you earlier there was 50 churches in our association, 60 in a neighboring association. So right there in just this little area, we have over 100 churches. In Pennsylvania, South Jersey area, there are less than 350 Southern Baptist churches in this ginormous area. In the state of Georgia, we have just over, last count, 34,000 Southern Baptist churches. In the state of Pennsylvania, you've got less than 350. Now, I know you're going, wait, that's the North. This is the Southern Baptist Convention. And that's true, but that's just a name, because we have churches in all parts of America and the world. And so what we know that's going to happen, you can almost guarantee it, but not always, a Southern Baptist church is going to be a missions-minded church. They're going to be a Bible-believing church. They're going to be very evangelistic. They're going to be conservative in theology. They're going to be conservative in thought. And so what has happened in these areas of South Jersey, they've found that it is one of the toughest places in all of America to plant a Southern Baptist church. It's one of the hardest in the whole country. Now, within this area contains two of the fastest growing counties in the country. And it's not just it's American, It's African, it's Nepalese, it's Honduran, it's people from all parts of the world. They're moving there because there are a lot of jobs available there. And so the North American Mission Board, which is part of our Southern Baptist Convention, has identified this as an unengaged, unreached people group, which a lot of times we go, wait a minute, isn't that those foreign countries? But North American Mission Board has essentially classified this area as an unengaged people group. Now, they haven't necessarily rejected in saying they're going to reject Jesus, and they haven't necessarily rejected church. They're not necessarily rejected religion. They've rejected organized religion. And this is why it's so important that we plant Southern Baptist churches in the area, because all they've seen examples of churches where where you just came, you did your mass thing on Saturday night, Sunday morning, and you left, and it did not impact your daily life. It did not change anything in your family. It did not alter your community in any way. And one of the reasons why it makes it so difficult is because, as I said, Southern Baptist churches are going to generally be Bible believing. They're going to be very conservative. They're going to be very missionally minded. And you've got a very liberal part of the world, especially politically, but socially as well. And the only thing they've ever known is really a lot of liberalism in their churches. And so what they're looking for and trying to see, and what these areas need, is people in those communities that are being transformational, not transactional. So in a lot of ways, it's a transaction. I provide a service here in church, you come to church service, and then that's the end of our deal. What they're looking for, and what missionaries and church planners in that area are trying to do, is create something that's transformational, where it's not just a Sunday-only transaction. It's something that happens every day, and it infiltrates all parts of culture, and it infiltrates all parts of community, and they try to be conservative, but they try to be current as well. So you've got that issue taking place. You've got issues where, like, most of the churches in that area that are Southern Baptist, 85% of them are bivocational pastors, that's not a slight. That doesn't make them less than. Not anything. It just means the work is a lot harder to do, because they're working and taking care of their family and giving their free time to the church. And so what you have is a lot of churches that, by the way, the average size of those churches, those less than 350 churches in that area, the average size of those churches is about 55 congregants. That's a big church. To get to 60, 75 members in a church up there, that's a big church. Most of the churches are 20 to 30, and you know what that means? It leaves 2 to 3 to do most of the work and to do most of the ministry. And so they're sitting there going, look, this is an area that has a huge need for churches. It's an area that has a huge need for ministry partners, and there are very few people here to do it. And so Pastor Frank Knuckles and the director of the Pennsylvania Baptist Convention, they know each other, reached out to one another and said, how can we create a partnership where in the very beginning part of that partnership, our churches partner with you, and then down the road, as your churches are healthier and more stable, how then can you partner back with this part of the world as well? And so we got to see an awful lot of churches and awful lot of ministries up there. We met with a church that is a biker church. All in all, that's what they do. Pastor's got the bandana and the bald head. His pictures are on my Facebook. I mean, they got it happening, dude. They're reaching a people group that I don't speak their language. All right, I don't fit into their world. But they're reaching a great people group. We met a pastor who ministers, met the pastor who most of the backpacks went to. He ministers in a very downtown, inner city environment. His whole church is fenced off with tall fences because it'd all be gone if it wasn't. He's ministering into an inner city area, and they're doing a great job. We met guys like him. We met guys like a pastor named Ed Roman, who's in the Carlisle area, and he has a lot of folks from Nepal moving in, from Africa moving in, and they're working at the factories, and there are a lot of young families, and they're giving everything they can to the household and to the family and to the house there. At the same time, most of the houses are falling in. Most of them have no cars. And so one of the biggest ministries that the church is doing is in transportation and in like the diaper bag, the wipes, that whole side of things with young families. That's the way to get involved. The schools up there will not allow the churches to be involved in the schools in any kind of way. Like, I can go tomorrow to Pike County High School and say, hey, I'd like to prayer walk your campus, and they'll be like, great, go for it, sign in here, do it. You cannot, as a church or a ministry, you cannot step foot on their campus. And it is not so much, I learned, that they just hate Christianity. It is so, if they let the Baptist church on campus, they got to let the Satanic church on campus and all these other little things that are out there vying for people's attention. And so they just say no kind of religious organization on campus, which sacrifices a lot of what churches and religious organizations can do for people in that area. So it falls then to that local church and that one pastor and a very few number of people to try to minister to this whole community. And so in a lot of ways, we were able to talk with some folks that provide, that have stockpiles of diapers and things like that. How can we get them to them? So we met all those guys. There's two that stand out for me that I want to tell you about. One is a pastor named Christian Aguilar. He's on your prayer list for tonight. And he is a pastor to the Fruit Worker and Farmers Ministry team. And so what will happen between the months of June and November, he will have 2,500 and something migrant workers in that area. Next to Washington, this part of Pennsylvania is one of the biggest growers of apples in the whole country. And so these guys are coming on work visas for 8 to 12 months, and they live in camps on the different farms around the area. And all they do is they get up and they go to work, and they come back home in the farm van. They cook dinner, rest a little bit, and they go back to sleep, and they repeat. They never see people. I actually saw this ministry, and on my Facebook page, there's some videos in there that you can see. They don't see people, and there's nowhere to go in the area around them. There's nothing to do. They don't have cars, they don't have transportation. And so they're away from their wife and children for months on end. They see nobody. Nobody knows they're there. Know nothing. And so we were able to go and visit their campus or their camp, which is basically like the most rundown army barracks you've ever seen. They were thrilled to death in tears that somebody sent them a microwave. We may even have 3 microwaves in our house between the garage, the basement, and upstairs. And these guys were just like, we have a microwave. This is amazing. Every one of them are wearing hand-me-down clothes, things that are going and things that are happening there. The camp we went to, Miss Joanne, was all Honduran. They were all there in Honduran. None of them spoke any English. We had a translator with us, and we went there, and Pastor Christian led a worship song together. And I'm telling you right now, most of the men I know in my life, if they just got done with work, are not the most chipper, cheerful, joyful people in the world. These young men were clapping harder than I've ever heard a church clap along with the music, singing louder than I've ever heard any man sing, and it was the minute they got off the van out of work. They were just so excited to see people and for somebody to be there with them, and just so excited because they're learning all this stuff about Jesus, and it's all new. And I'm going to tell you, as a pastor, I'll confess this, I'm just like anybody else. I got a real problem with illegal aliens. I got a real problem with people not paying taxes, and we lump them all into the same thing. these people I met are not them. They're here working, they're doing things, and what I saw, the joy of Christ in them, made me want to go, I want to help these people. However I can help these people, I don't care, let's just do it. That was one of them. I told Frank and the team, I said, I don't care what we do with any of these other churches, we're helping those people. I mean, we're going to do what we can to help those people. What y'all don't know is Sandy and I have been praying for the last few months, what are we going to do with this container we got? What are we going to do with this container ministry? How can we best use it? And one of the things we saw with the fruit worker people was they're so excited to have a microwave. Well, what if the association of churches, these 50-something churches, could get together and say, hey, I got mattresses, I got towels, I got clothes, I got shoes, I got toiletries, I got toilet paper, I got microwaves, I got all this stuff that people are generally going, hey, can the church use this? And most of the time here in Zebulon and right here, we can't really use that. But we're looking for a place to give it, and we can sell it on Marketplace for $5, and it won't change a second of your life. But if we could fill that container to capacity, like absolutely load it down and get it to Christian Aguilar and that ministry center, and for him to be able to say, of any of the 2,500 people that you have in your ministry, if you need towels, go to the container, they're in there. If you need another microwave, go to the container, it's in there. You ain't got to ask, you ain't got to hope. We've already answered your prayer. It's already there. Just go get it out of there and give it to them. And so for me, it's almost like the idea of a mobile rolling thrift store, except you ain't got to go buy anything. Just, it's there, go get it. And so Frank and the rest of the crew, they were excited about that opportunity, and that's a great way to be able to get it there. So that's one of the things that I think immediately, without any thought, we can say, hey, we're going to put this container in a central area in our association and ask the churches in our association to help fill it with anything that fruit workers folks ever need. And we know we can do that. It doesn't take a whole lot to do that. What I would love to do in the future is to be able to take some men, especially, to that area with a couple of grills, throw some meat on the barbie, grill up some food, kick a soccer ball around with these men, and let men minister to men and iron sharpen iron. One of the men that I saw and met with who sang louder than anybody else, who smiled more than anybody else, you know what he told me? He said, 8 months ago, I lost my daughter. She died while I was here working. And the farm owners, the fruit growers were like, we'll get you home. But if he goes home, he can't come right back because of the visa stuff. And so he said, I stayed here. And he said, I know some people would think less of me for doing that. He said, but if I don't stay and I don't work, my other children don't eat. My family doesn't eat. We don't have anything. They make here in 1 week what you would make in a month and a half back home. And so I'm going, there's a man who is sacrificing everything for his wife and for his children. And the more money he can send back home, the more he feels like he's doing what he's called to do as a man. And so if he doesn't have to, the least amount of money he can spend on towels, toiletries, food, that kind of thing here, the more he could do. But in the process of all doing that, they don't see anybody. They don't meet anybody. They don't come in contact with people, and they don't see their family for months and months and months. Well, what if we could go up, throw some meat on the barbecue, grill out, have a good time, just let men minister to men, kick a soccer ball around, and have a great time doing it. I think that's a very good way of practical ministry. The other thing that I saw, met a guy named Chapin Jones. He's a young man that used to be a youth pastor, so he's near and dear to my heart. He's planting a church in an area called Sealands Grove, Pennsylvania. You can actually look that up on Google, and what he is doing is he is getting ready to launch and start a church in this fall. And so he is meeting what he calls some missional communities. So like what we do on Tuesdays is we try to go over to the coffee shop and we do a little Bible study. We talk about things and how we can do life together and how we can do missions together and how we can better impact Zebulon. That is essentially how he's growing his church, is getting a missional community in this neighborhood, trying to start a missional community in another neighborhood, all the while trying to get ready to launch a church in their downtown area near the pizza parlors and all the other stuff that they have in downtown Selinsgrove. Everything operates around a family park where it's where all the kids and all the young people get together. And we're looking at that ministry opportunity, and what he needs more than anything else is manpower. He's doing it by himself. He and his wife went and planted the church. He now has a newborn baby. And so mama's got to do what mama's got to do, which means he's doing everything and trying to be dad and husband. And so what he said is, man, I mean, money's great. You know, rent is tight on a small church like us in the building that we're meeting in. He said, but what I could use is people that can come up here and help me do Vacation Bible School in these communities. People that can come up here and help me reach out to the youth in this community. We want to put in a community garden around the church. I could use some manpower from that. There are a few homes that could use a little bit of help. And one of the ways that you really get the community involved in is you have to invest in your community. In fact, he told us, he said, as long as I was renting, nobody was taking my church plant seriously. And he said, the minute I bought my house, everybody said, you're a local. And they started to think of me as really being there and this really being a viable thing in this community. And so this is a whole community that the only church they had at the time was a Catholic church that shut down. There's nothing else, nothing for the young people and the families there. And so I got thinking, I'm like, God, well, what if we had men that could go and do some construction projects? What if we had some young people, some ladies, some families doing Vacation Bible School in some of these communities? What if we had some folks, you know, helping to do some cooking things or helping to teach some different skills to the people in that neighborhood? What if we had some of our senior adults that are really into gardening and planting and all that stuff? What if they could work on that? What if we could set aside a few mission trips over the next 3 to 5 years and say, you know what, outside of the cooperative program, outside of what we do with Annie Armstrong, Lottie Moon, this is our partner community where we're going to say, I want to help this church get off the ground and reach, because like I said, there's only less than 300 of them in the area. So there ain't any other Bible-believing churches in his area. If we can help him give a boost and give him manpower, then he can reach, and their people can be free to reach their community. And what does that teach us? It gives us this great opportunity to learn about missions, because it's hard to just go sometimes and do missions in your own community because you know everybody and you're so comfortable in that area. But you say, you know what, I'm fully away, I'm going to fully focus on this area, and I'm going to do missions, and I'm going to be able to see, as a senior adult, young people involved in ministry. I, as a young person, am going to be able to see a senior adult involved in ministry. And if we're going to be a true multi-generational church, what better way to grow in unity, joy, missionally, as a multi-generational church than as a multi-generational mission trip, where it's not just one group that can go and do something, but it's all the groups that can go and do something. And, you know, a lot of us, you know, one of the things that I learned real quickly coming into town and doing some of the funerals that I've done and meeting some people I've done, you know, we had a strong group of senior adults that were doing the ministry in Molina and doing those things over there, and that was awesome. And that is sort of where it's at now. But what if we could all see each other doing missions, and the senior adults know that, hey, that kid's working his tail off for this. And look what, they don't just tell me about missions, but I'm seeing them do missions. And I can see those adults do missions, and young men and young women and older men and women creating those bonds in the middle of that in a place that we can get to in 5 or 6 hours if we drive, or an hour and 15 minutes if we fly. We've got folks like Charles Horde and the Walker Boys that do DJ stuff. Well, imagine if we could load up the DJ equipment and go to this community and throw a block party and get everybody's attention and get them coming to Chapin's church to do Vacation Bible School? How does that begin to reach it? And while we're doing that, what if there's a couple of areas where there's some light construction work that some of our men might say, I can't do much, but I can swing a hammer, I can measure something, I can cut it just right, let me be involved in that. And maybe some other folks go, well, I can't do any one of those, but I can teach you how to plant a garden. And what if during the day we're in Pennsylvania and we got one crew doing Vacation Bible School, one crew doing construction, one crew doing gardening, one crew meeting with some of the senior adults in that area and doing missions and ministries with them the way we do that here? What would that do for our church? How would that boost us in the next 100 to 200 years of the life of Zebulon? Everybody knows the story about taking the lock off the door and doing missions from way, way back. What I'm starting to look forward to in the future is 100 years from now, what will they then say about the crew that was here in 2023? What will they say about our missions involvement? What will they say about what we did for our community, for our country, and for our world? And so I'm just seeing the hand of God sort of weaving a lot of these things together, which if I'd have said no at any point, no, I've never been on a plane. No, I don't want to go talk for 3.5 days or 2.5 days. No, I don't want to be away from home for 2.5 days. We would not have been involved in that. God would not be growing me and would not be allowed to sort of challenge us and how we can move into that next phase of what we can do as ministry. And so right now, the only thing that I'm really the only thing that's on my heart and my mind right now is praying for these men and women right now. I know, and I will confess that far too often, as a person that is a doer, you say, well, I'll pray for you, and it feels sometimes like you're not doing enough. But you are talking to the creator of the universe who sustained it all and knit it all together, and so praying is the greatest thing that we can do. And right now, my only challenge for us and for myself is that we'll begin to pray for these men and women, and we'll begin to pray for how can I be involved? How can the church be involved? How can we be the good news? And see where God leads us down the road. So if you've got your prayer list, there's a couple of names on there. Sealands Grove that you'll see on there. That is the name of the community.
Thank you for joining Zebulon's Pharmacy. If you have not visited with us in person, we invite you to do so. Our Sunday morning Bible study starts at 9:45 a.m. and our Sunday morning worship service starts at 11 o'clock a.m. We would be honored to have you visit our church. We have a safe and growing children's ministry with volunteers who love children and love having fun. Our youth ministry, the Epic Student Ministry, is a growing and energetic group of students who want to deepen their faith in Christ. Our students serve our community as well as other communities in many ways. If you would like someone to pray with you or if you have questions about our church,